Mega Man 11 is, to date, the most recent Mega Man game released, and it's getting close to a decade since it released if you wanted to feel old. What's interesting about Mega Man 11 is that it's also become the most successful Mega Man game ever released. Through various sales and bundles, the game has become the only Mega Man game to outsell Devil May Cry 2, which should reveal to you, if you didn't know, this is a pretty niche series. Always has been, always will be. But the success of Mega Man 11 is pretty interesting, so we're going to discuss all that in the game itself. But before I even think about it, we need to talk about how Factor 75 is the sponsor of today's video. Get fresh, ready-made meals delivered to your doorstep when you sign up with Factor. No more meal prep to spend time on, dishes to have to clean, and no more trashy fast food, cause Factor's chef-created meals are fresh, never frozen, and designed by dietitians to ensure every meal is nutritional. Meals come together in minutes, taking the guesswork out of what to make for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Accommodating folks with a variety of different diet lifestyles, including keto, low-calorie, vegan, and vegetarian. With more than 27 options each week, there's something for everyone to enjoy. One meal from my box that I really liked was the green goddess chicken with the garlic spinach. Like always, it's simple to prepare and tasted really good. Meal plans range from 4 to 18 meals per week, and you can add more or reduce the number depending on your specific needs, and you can easily modify preferences and skip a week if you feel so inclined. So if you want to get in on the action, which I know you do, you best head over to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code 50JsReviews to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50JsReviews at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factor is now owned by HelloFresh, and with a wider array of meal plans to choose from, there's something for everyone. And because of all that, my listeners can enjoy both brands at a discount by using the link below or the code I mentioned before. Thanks again to Factor75 for being the sponsor of the video. Now, without further ado, we may now return to your regularly scheduled programming. As per usual, I'm going to establish some context before we dive into the game itself. When Mega Man 11 came out for PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC in 2018, it had been a very long time between Mega Man games. The last new Mega Man game was Mega Man 10 in 2010. Fans were restless for a new game, because after 10, several announced Mega Man games were scrapped, and the once well-fed Mega Man fanbase was left with nothing. My video on Mighty No. 9 went into detail on the years between Mega Man 10 and 11. But the main takeaway was that these years showed fans were still interested in seeing the series return. Capcom capitalized with the Legacy collections that re-released all the main series games. 2017 was the 30th anniversary of Mega Man, and to celebrate we got two big announcements. First was the Mega Man X Legacy collection with all 8 main X titles, and the other huge news was Mega Man 11, a next-generation 2.5D Mega Man game that was going to release in the fall of 2018. This was back when Capcom was really going back to their roots of their classic franchises, giving them modern-day games with design inspired by the titles that made fans fall in love with these games in the first place. 11 was that for Mega Man. It was a really exciting time to be a fan of the series. It was back and the whole industry was celebrating. Mega Man 11 even made the front cover for an issue of the Game Informer magazine. I love this cover because it shows all the various US box art designs of Mega Man, including the terrible ones that are so bad they're good. Eventually leading to Mega Man 11, which uses the same art style in all regions. As a huge fan of the series, I bought Mega Man 11 on PS4 and PC when it came out, naturally, and while this is the part where I'd normally tell you how I felt about it on the first playthrough and what I'm expecting from it now, but actually, I've never played this game all the way through before today. I have played it. I remember getting to the Wily Fortress at some point like 2 years after the game came out, but I never finished it. I barely even remember that playthrough. So I'm more or less treating this as my first run. This game pretty much passed me by, but now it's been almost 7 years since Mega Man 11 came out, and I'm here to close my classic Mega Man retrospective by diving into it. The game begins with a flashback that takes place long before the first Mega Man game. It depicts the falling out of Dr. Light and Dr. Wily that began the whole series. We always knew that Light and Wily were robotics school colleagues, but now we see what happened between them was that Light was pitching an innovative new technology, robots capable of independent thought, while Wily was pitching the innovative double gear system which would either increase a robot's speed or power to make them more efficient. The board favored Light's Robot Master project, and Wily was forced to abandon the double gear system and swore revenge. Many years later, Light perfected the Robot Master, and that's when Wily began his reign of terror in Mega Man 1. Now, in Mega Man 11, Wily suddenly remembers this moment in a dream and decides to revive the double gear system as a way to kill Mega Man. Wily hijacks 8 of Light's Robot Masters: Block Man, Acid Man, Impact Man, Bounce Man, Fuse Man, Tundra Man, Torch Man, and Blast Man. He puts the double gear in all of them, and it's now up to Mega Man to fight against it. But it turns out, Light kept the original Double Gear prototype that Wily scrapped and gives it to Mega Man, which is your new power for the game, thus setting up the journey of Mega Man 11. Blockman was the boss featured in most of the previews that I saw, so his was the level I picked first. Playing it, I had a lot of observations. For starters, I think the controls felt great in this game. Mega Man's mobility has been restored to what it once was. You can slide and you can charge your shots with the Mega Buster, so the biggest thing players had against the gameplay of Mega Man's 9 and 10 has been addressed. Because of this, the level design can have more complexity than those games, and to go along with it, Mega Man just feels really responsive in this one. Running and jumping all feels really light, which is good in a fast-paced platformer like this game. Rush Coil and Rush Jet are in this game, and they function as they have in countless games. But what is new here is that they're mapped to the triangle and circle buttons. You no longer need to equip them, so they're more usable in the moment-to-moment gameplay, like this block section of Wily 1 where I use Rush Jet to quickly skip past the second half of the puzzle. But you can also bind the controls however you want, including putting the slide on a button as well. The usual D-pad down and jump worked for me, but it's nice to have options. As I said a moment ago, the big thing with this one is the double gear system. With a press of the trigger buttons, Mega Man will access either the speed gear or the power gear. These should be fairly self-explanatory. The former slows down time, giving you more time to react to obstacles and enemies, and the other increases your power output. As long as this gauge isn't full, you can use either one to your heart's content. If you reach the max, it will need to cool down for a few seconds before you can use it again. I didn't really use the power gear much outside of mini-bosses, and I used it to make special weapons more powerful during boss encounters, but during the stages it was always the speed gear I used. I suppose that's the intended balance, but it does lead to the speed gear feeling more useful in my mind since it's the one I used way more often. Blockman stage puts both abilities to great use, though. There are many moments where you have to quickly react to things, like these giant blocks that fall down in a conveyor belt that you need to navigate through. The speed gear gives you more time to think about your approach before you do it, and then the power gear is useful during the mini-bosses. But the best part about these upgrades is that you could play virtually the whole game and never use it. The speed gear can teach you about what's coming, like the drill enemies in Impact Man stage, but if you have the speed and reaction time, you don't even need to slow down time for it, you can just get through it normally. This goes for any obstacle that the speed gear trivializes. I think that makes it a pretty good feature. You're given lots of reasons to use it. You know, the game has super powerful mini-bosses and bosses that go into overdrive with their own speed and power gear abilities, and then there's fast-paced stage hazards. All of those give you a reason to use the speed and power gears, but if you feel skilled enough, you can get through it without the extra boost. It's a very unobtrusive gimmick. Getting to play around with it was a highlight of the early levels, since the designers really upped how perilous the set pieces could get, since you have the ability to slow down time, like an Acid Man stage where there's rushing water pulling you forward and you need to jump over spikes in narrow passageways. That part always feels like I'm a goner if I time this jump even slightly too early, but I made it on both of my runs for the video. It was probably designed to feel like that, even if the jump might not be that difficult. In general, I thought there were a lot of cool stage designs in Mega Man 11, like Bounce Man's level. Here, you need to get really high up and jump on these platforms to get launched into the next area. And they do interesting things with it, like having to clear the bounce path of obstacles before you can blast off. And it also has other interesting gimmicks like bouncing on balloons at the right angle to get through. Though it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to realize this part here was something you didn't need to bounce to, you just needed to jump normally. I enjoyed how in Acid Man stage, the liquid gets more poisonous the more these enemies drop into it. You can gauge how safe it is to jump on by the color and by how enemies in the water react to it. At its most acidic, they die instantly, so you'd know to avoid it. But you don't have to worry about it if you're fast enough to kill the enemies dropping the acid. Overall, I thought the first 4 levels I picked were fun. But there were 2 big issues that hindered my runs a bit. First, the checkpoints are really few and far between in 11. You can die in this game and be sent rooms back, needing to play the same obstacles over and over again to get through the stage. That's one thing, but it really started to actually annoy me because of the second thing. Mega Man 11 has some of the most obnoxious knockback deaths I have seen in these games in a while. The end of Blockman stage was the guiltiest example, where I would just get hit at the perfect moment and be sent into the abyss. This was a constant throughout the whole game. Obstacles felt fair, but the knockback and your inability to recover from it was pretty annoying. It's an issue that caused me a lot of trouble in the first couple stages I played, but it's also fairly self-explanatory why it bothers me. You just lose a lot of progress to it because of this game having lives and game overs. These days, more and more platformers, even continuations of old franchises, are getting rid of lives and game overs. They were invented because it made games longer and forced you to spend more money on them in arcades. That's just not a thing anymore. So game designers ask themselves if these are necessary features, and many more keep saying no. Thing is, I believe it's totally possible to design a tough game that doesn't use them at all, which is what I prefer. I thought the challenges of Mega Man 11 were fairly designed, but it is a layer of tedium attached to it because getting a game over means doing parts you've already conquered again for basically no reason. By default, you only have 3 lives, and they can go pretty quick to little things that will make you redo a lot of progress. But that's only if you play the game on the normal difficulty. Mega Man 11 has 4 difficulty options. Normal, the second highest, is what I played. It was designed to be for Mega Man fans looking for a semi-challenging experience. It's what the game was meant to be. But then the second lowest difficulty is also for Mega Man fans who haven't played it in a while. I played this on my second playthrough to see what it was like. By default, you have 6 lives, and checkpoints are in almost every room, you take less damage and dish out more of it. I thought this was a little bit overkill, especially since the game has an even easier difficulty option below it. I think the 2 options in the middle could have been fused to create a more balanced normal mode. I don't think the damage values on normal were bad. There weren't enough checkpoints on normal, but too many below that. I just think having 1 or 2 more per stage, depending on how long it was, would have been a fine compromise. And I honestly wouldn't even mind the lives if the knockback wasn't so aggressive at the start. Your mileage may vary, but I'm likely going to play the game on normal going forward, but it does have some semi-frustrating traits that may lead you to lowering the difficulty. I only struggled on normal at the very beginning. Once you get into a groove and have special weapons, things become much more manageable. I didn't study boss patterns super close while playing. When they move fast, going into speed gear was useful, and when they're open for damage, using the power gear where the boss's weakness drained the health bar pretty quickly. And then the weapons were pretty useful too. Especially when the power gear was on. The block weapon just drops 10 of them at once. The ball weapon goes all over the screen, the electricity weapon hits enemies hiding above and below you, the fire weapon is pretty useful when the enemies are coming at an angle, and then Tundra Man's weapon can really clear the screen quickly. I thought the weapons were fun to use. A lot of the time I was using the Mega Buster, but whenever a weapon was needed, it served its purpose and then some. But even looking past the weapons, it's really in the shop where Mega Man becomes a ferocious beast.
Ferocious beast?
Run, Sly, run! Fear the beast!
At first, you have the usual E-tanks and weapon tanks and extra lives and all that normal stuff, but later in the game, certain parts will be unlockable and you can use them to become very OP. Like if you use the speed gear enough, you get an upgrade that lets you run at normal speed while everything else is slowed down. That is crazy powerful. It's like nothing stands a chance against you anymore. And then you also get an upgrade to slightly reduce knockback. Almost as if they knew. Thanks for that game. But then another must-have upgrade is one that makes your shots and charge shots bigger, and that was also a godsend. I was kind of flying through the back half of Robot Master stages because I was way more powerful and had almost a full set of E-tanks and lives. I just cleared this Torchman mini-boss with Tundra Man's weapon in no time flat. But still, I enjoyed what I was playing because the levels still felt pretty creative. Torchman's level, for example, may be another fire stage, which we've had in virtually every Mega Man game, but this one's a campsite in the woods that lights on fire at the end. I thought the levels in this game had consistently cool settings like that. The only thing I didn't like as much about them was the audio-visual element of the stages. The game looks fine. You don't really need a Mega Man game to have dazzling visuals, I suppose. You just need to focus on Mega Man and the obstacles. But it does look kinda cheap with its effects. Not as much as Mighty No. 9, but still, the running animation looks a bit stiff and some of the effects look pretty mid. I like how expressive some of the enemies get though, but beyond that, the game doesn't look like it would be out of place as an early Xbox 360 game. And I still don't even think it would impress much if it was. Again, I'm fine with that, but it might disappoint some. I didn't really care for the soundtrack in this game that much either. This game does that modern, retro, throwback game thing where the music sounds really synthy and MIDI. I'm not a music terminology guy, but I'm just saying that's probably my least favorite classic Mega Man soundtrack. I just wouldn't care to listen to any of the stage themes from this game outside of the game, and in the game it just felt like background noise. I'm willing to be generous and say that might be because of how it's the classic Mega Man soundtrack I've heard the least, but I wasn't into it, so I doubt it's going to rise much higher than any of the rest for me. The plot was interesting at first, though. 11 doesn't even try to have some kind of twist with Wily, he's just the villain from Second 1. Not that 9 and 10 were even trying to fool anyone at that point, but still. And as I said up top, I like the opening scene giving us more backstory on the characters on screen. However, there really isn't anything of note that happens in Mega Man 11 past the opening. It's hard to say there would be since this was the most recent game, however, it feels a bit one note. After Mega Man gets the double gear, he uses it and stops Wily with it. Maybe you could imagine that a more stable double gear is how Dr. Light eventually created upgrades for Mega Man X. As in, for Mega Man, double gear was too unstable to be used for prolonged periods of time, but then Light manages to find a way to give X the ability to gain speed by dashing, and give X Buster upgrades that increase his charging capacity. Perhaps further development on the double gear was how he managed to do it. Hard to say, it's never been said, but beyond that, I didn't really have anything to say about the game's story or world. Cutscenes felt pretty bare bones, like watching NES sprites standing there, only now in 3D models. But I did like the voices for the various characters. I thought those were some of the best takes these characters have had. Except Mega Man, I thought he sounded weirdly deep. I kinda liked his powered-up portrayal better. But speaking of that game, 11 also continues its trend of making Mega Man's civilian name Mega, when it's supposed to be Rock. That's how you get the pun of the brother and sister being called Rock and Roll. Look, I get it, his name in Japan is Rockman, and thus his civilian name is Rock. And they're just doing that, but changing it to reflect the English name of Mega Man. But I don't think anyone would be lost if his civilian name was still Rock. It works way better than Mega. That just sounds silly. But I suppose I'm just nitpicking. If you've seen all of these videos, you probably know what happens now. The 8 bosses are beaten, and I've talked about the story and such. Time for the final levels. Thankfully, you don't have to complete them all in a gauntlet like Mega Man's 9 and 10. You can visit the shop between any of the stages and continue where you left off, thank goodness. Especially because Wily 1 is an absolute madhouse in this game. It puts the speed gear to the absolute test as you use it to stand on spinning gears that are moving way too fast to walk on normally. In that sense, I liked Wily 1. But for me, it was the hardest level in the entire game because of the aggravating knockback. Even with the upgrade, I was still getting sent plummeting to my doom regularly. It's not that hard if you take it slow, but sometimes you panic and get killed. I had actually been playing the game for like 3 hours straight when I got here the first time, and I was just dying left, right, and center. It got to the point where I was like, okay, maybe I need to take a break. I usually like to record entire Mega Man games in one sitting, but it was at that point, where you've been playing long enough that you just start to suck at the game, and the more you keep playing, the worse it's gonna get, so I stopped and came back to it the next day. I still thought it was challenging, especially because of the Yellow Devil's return, but I got through it after grinding for E-Tanks and extra lives. The Yellow Devil's normal routine is somewhat easy since you have the speed gear, but the issue is that he just hits like a tank as always, so the more erratic new parts of the boss are definitely tough. But genuinely though, that was the hardest part of the game for me, so I was pretty worried about the rest of the Wily Fortress. Only for it to be pretty easy. Wily 2 isn't a short level, but it's pretty simple. It brings back being chased by a deadly obstacle from Blockman stage and the explosives from Blastman stage. However, it's nothing you can't do if you made it this far. I cleared the mini-bosses by spamming my most powerful special weapons with the power gear. I basically did that for the boss fight as well. It was a cakewalk, as was Wily 3, which was a short hallway before getting to the boss rush. Mercifully, this game's boss rush is in a separate stage from the final battle. I've only been complaining about that for like the last God knows how many games. But besides that, I don't even have anything to say on this part. I was just repeating my strat from the main game, which was spamming attacks whenever I saw an opening and hoping the enemy died before I did. 8 bosses later, and it was done. So Wily 4 was the 2-phase final fight with the Mad Doctor, and it was also pretty underwhelming, have to say. The first phase was made pretty simple with the speed and power gears. It was like he stood no chance against me. But then the second phase was when Wily started using the double gear himself, but it didn't really help him much because I didn't have trouble with this either. And then the game ends kinda unceremoniously. Wily's beaten, and Light arrives to say that Mega Man is the perfect model of what their combined talents can bring, as he's a thinking robot and can use the double gear. Wily doesn't care and escapes, vowing to destroy them both. While Light brings his robots back online, and the day is saved, and the game is over. At the end of the day, I don't have much to say on Mega Man 11 itself. My thoughts on it should be pretty easy to predict just by having seen the previous videos and hearing what I've said so far. I think Mega Man 11 is a really fun 2D platformer. It's got creative levels, weapons, and tons of new features worth exploring. It does just about everything right for me and got the reception it deserved. It's not my favorite game of all time or my favorite classic Mega Man game or anything super important like that, but I enjoyed it. I thought this game was pretty cool, and it seems most people do, which is all you can really ask for. But then, what I do want to talk about before we wrap this up is how this is to date the most recent Mega Man game, and it came out in 2018. Mega Man fans have once again become restless for a new game and are resentful towards Capcom for not giving it to them. I'm just going to be entirely honest and say I really don't agree. I honestly believe the franchise is in a healthy position right now. Here's why. Part of what made the original Mega Man drought so damaging to fans was how we went from getting like 5 games a year to none in a heartbeat. Several announced games being cancelled outright. That was a rocky 8 years getting from Mega Man 10 to 11. But I don't know, I just don't feel like Mega Man needs yearly sequels anymore. Capcom has shifted their business strategy for the franchise in a way that I think is smart. They used to make these games for kinda cheap and make back whatever profit they could, but now they're banking on Mega Man's back catalog of games. These legacy collections have all mostly sold 1 million copies each, the Battle Network collection being one of the fastest selling Mega Man games. Mega Man 11 is the best-selling Mega Man game of all time, having sold 2 million units in 7 years because it's the current face of the series. It's usually on sale and is in Capcom bundles, so people tend to give it a shot and enjoy it. I'm sure we'll see a new game at some point, but as I've always said, this is not a super popular series. Mega Man 11 is the only game in the entire Mega Man franchise that has sold more units than DMC2 did on PlayStation 2. Capcom doesn't really have a reason to make yearly sequels to these games anymore, when Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, Street Fighter, and Devil May Cry sell millions upon millions of copies per game. I think Capcom making all of Mega Man's core installments available on current platforms and occasionally putting out a new game and giving it the best chance for sales via price cuts and bundles is a wise move. But of course, to the content-hungry Mega Man fan, which I suppose is a redundant label, that's not really enough. And I'm not trying to make anyone who feels this way think they're wrong inherently. Part of being a fan of something is enjoying it and wanting more of it, and in a media landscape surrounded by endless legacy sequels and remakes and nostalgia, even from Capcom for their other franchises, it makes sense to wonder, why can't Mega Man get the same treatment? I just want to share that, from my perspective, I think it's okay. Simply because, while Mega Man is not a very popular IP, he had a really good run. A run that most other franchises could only dream of. Just look at the classic Mega Man series alone. In the last year, I've reviewed like 25 games just in the original series. Not to mention the fact that the Mega Man X series has over 10 games if you count spin-offs and remakes. There are 4 Mega Man Zero games, 2 ZX games, over 6 Battle Network games, and 3 Star Force games, and 3 Mega Man Legends games. This is a big series, something the 30th anniversary video showcased. I personally feel content with the amount of Mega Man content we have. I have played Mega Man X1, X2, X3, and X4 maybe 500 times each. That's probably a conservative estimation. I have played the X series for well over 1,000 hours. Those first 4 X games are some of my favorite 2D action platformers to ever be made. And then I thought all 12 main series classic Mega Man games were good. Across these 12 videos, there wasn't a single game that I thought was worse than good. Even Mega Man 1 was better than the sum of its parts. So that is 12 games I can see myself replaying, and I already have gone back to a lot of them a couple times since the videos first came out last year. I go back to Mega Man 0, 2 through 4 at least once a year, sometimes even the first MMZ. I haven't played the Legends series in a long time, but I look forward to covering them in video form as well. My point is, though, there's just a lot to enjoy about Mega Man already, and I haven't even played the Battle Network and Star Force games as of this recording, and I've been a Mega Man fan for a decade now. I can't speak for everyone, but I just think the Mega Man series has given us a lot to enjoy and replay and talk about, and from this point forward, I really wouldn't mind if there wasn't another one. Fan developers have also given us amazing fan games and ROM hacks that extend the shelf life of the series even more. I love Mega Man. It's one of my all-time favorite franchises in gaming history, but I'm honestly happy with where it's at. If you aren't, that makes sense, especially if you've been a fan far longer than me and have more than gotten your fill out of the 100 Mega Man games that exist, but I'm just sharing how I feel now that I've finally beaten and reviewed Mega Man 11, and I think that's a fair place to end it. If we ever get Mega Man 12, I'd be happy to play it, but I think the series as it stands now was really good. So I hope you guys enjoyed the journey to this point. So, as always, if you made it this far into the video, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.